we talked about some issues here tonight, and you've been a city administrator long enough with years and years of being involved in those things. Share some of your wisdom about fighting the commute trip reduction thing. That you know, it's a much bigger picture than we see simply here in Washougal. And exactly what you said, if we don't play along with them, then they don't play with us whenever we have this special project. But you've had 25 years of experience in this ball field. Tell us what you think about some of these things. How do you fight those for? or is it not worth your time? And do it briefly.
I think the remark that you should do it with careful forethought, if indeed you do that, is a thoughtful remark. I'd like to, in my own way, try to thoughtfully address that in some observations and recommendations that I have for you that I'll produce in written form and not take parts of the meeting this evening. Generally speaking, the councils that I have been around have chosen to focus on the direct business of the city at hand with a remarkable amount of focus, to look to the outside world occasionally for help, particularly in financing infrastructure projects, and then to reserve a major part of their energy, thought, opinions, viewpoints, and so on the wider world for discussions outside of the city arena. That's the short version. And it is all meant very, obviously, always very constructively.
Donnie?
I wasn't asked, but I'll. As I recall, and I'm trying to remember exactly the details, one example of a county the county, I think it was, that decided not to play ball with the state was the city, or the county of Chelan, that chose not to plan under GMA. I said, no, we're not gonna do that. Well, they got spanked pretty good. So pick your fights carefully. Pick your fights very carefully.
Any other council comments? Moving into the Agenda Bill 13-10. Mr. Stevenson.
This is a proposal for a professional service agreement with the TDJ CPA Incorporated. The city has in the past engaged services of TDJ CPA Inc. for the preparation of the city's financial statements. The city would like to again retain the services of TDJ CPA Inc. to prepare the City of Washougal financial statements and related note disclosures for the year ended December 31st, 2009. The recommended action is to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the engagement letter with TDJ CPA Inc.
Questions from council?
Mr. Brown, make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the engagement letter with TDJ CPA Incorporated.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Shoemaker.
Is there a reason why this wasn't put out for public bid?
Professional services don't have to be put out for public bid. Doesn't mean they couldn't be, but they're not required.
I believe RJ's confidence in this individual, having done past work for the city, they turn back to her again. Other questions, comments? We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Agenda Bill 14-10, PSA with Paul Lewis. Mr. Halverson or Mr. Stevenson?
I'll carry this with a brief introduction. This was handled at your most recent workshop, I think quite extensively. The background information in the agenda packet includes a brief agreement, professional services agreement between the city and Paul Lewis. It includes a scope of work. This would be for financial services support to the city, and the major objectives include assessing and making recommendations for changes in the Washougal Budget Monitoring System, the 2011 revenue and expense projections, fund balance targets, and the indirect cost plan, assessing the selected financial and accounting policies and procedures, and assisting the Finance Department staff in establishing responsibilities and role expectations for the Finance Committee. Mr. Lewis, I think, has a highly credible background and experience and will be a very fine supplement to what we do over the next, note that I still say we, what we do over the next approximately 10 weeks, and I'm happy to recommend this to you. And I will be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement providing for Mr. Paul Lewis financial services support.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor?
When we take a look at this agreement, and by the way, I'm in favor of this agreement overall, so let me just start off with that. No need to panic yet. Under Section 2, Item number 5, only in government can you find a contract that sounds like this. It reads as follows. Since consultants' costs can be adversely affected through the application of new or additional taxes or charges, amounts due the consultant and corresponding contract ceilings will be increased equitably to compensate for any additional taxation charges over those currently in effect. I mean, only in government can we see this.
I can readily understand why it caught your eye.
Yeah. It just strikes me that normally that with contracts, taxes are somewhat expected to come out of the fees. So we're basically saying this is tax-free for the amount of money that he is receiving. Is that correct? In essence, as far as the impact is concerned, the gross amount is, or I should say, whatever amount he's expecting to get is adjusted so that we basically pay the taxes.
I don't disagree with that, and I can assure you Washougal has not been singled out for that approach.
That was his part of the negotiation, I take it?
We did not, this is a rather standard way that Mr. Lewis engages and work with entities.
I like his standard. Yeah, it works well for him. No other comments?
Let me, this is ever so slightly defensive. I asked Mr. Lewis about his rates, and the following day, noting what a good client he thought this would be, I noticed not a huge, but a reduction in his hourly rate, which also probably reflects this is a substantial piece of work over a number of weeks. And just let the record note that, please.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 1510, Professional Services Agreement with Wallace Engineering. Mrs. Boyes, I believe you're taking this one?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The Public Works staff is submitting a professional service agreement from Wallace Engineering for general engineering services to support the Department of Public Works. Wallace Engineering will provide engineering and technical services, consultation and advice, and assist in the engineering work of the city. The engineer will provide these services upon written or verbal direction of an authorized representative and will confirm verbal requests from the city in writing. The scope of the service for this agreement includes miscellaneous